if I bring this up just to demonstrate here, my forearm line, if it's pointing like a little, what is it, like Spider-Man, sort of Spidey's a little laser out of there, that's way ahead of where the shaft is at. Now, by the time I get to impact, that right arm points 2 feet or so ahead. Again, the right forearm is well ahead of where the shaft is. And the whole point of that, if I bring that up, is to have the club head behind my hands, right? That gives me shaft lean, hit the ball solid and farther. Hey guys, so it's that time of year again for us at CogornoGolf.com. Our prices will be going up as of July 15th. And I want to make sure you're aware of this. So if you sign up before July 15th, you lock in our current prices forever for as long as you're a member. So currently our prices are $69 a month or $495 for our yearly price. As of July 15th, they will be going up to $89 a month and $595 for the yearly. You guys have showed us awesome support, and to keep up with our demand, right, we have no choice, but eventually we have to raise some of those prices. Myself and all of our coaches are there 24/7 for you to send in your swings, right? We give you that monthly feedback that you get and answer all the questions you have. I'm telling you guys, it's awesome. I wish I had this back when I was playing to use as a resource. You get all of our practice plans. You get a specific plan from a coach, what drills to do, what priorities to focus on, what not to focus on, how many reps to do of those drills, when to move on to the next piece. And guess what? We don't just leave you go do them. We're there. Ask us questions. We help you guide through fields. All of us have been working on our own games. We know what it's like to take your game to the next level. You're going to absolutely love our community there. July 15th is when those prices go up. If you want to lock in that lower price, you've been thinking about joining, I urge you to do so. I'm very confident we can help you with your golf game. We'll put the link to Cogorno Golf down below. So this right arm throwing action during the downswing, there's a really awesome visual that I came across when I was looking at some swings on Analyzer. What I want to do is I want to show you that first, then we're going to come back. I'm going to talk you through these feels and this laser drill that I know you're going to love. Let's go over, check that out, show you what I'm talking about, and then we'll come right back. Let's take a look here. Adam Scott, I'm going to show you a couple examples, pretty cool visuals of how the trail arm and right forearm work. Check this out. Once the hands and the club gets to parallel to the ground, roughly here, notice the right forearm points, we had that laser right through the wrist, points essentially right at the golf ball. Now by the time we get to impact, that right forearm will point a few feet in front, and the right forearm and shaft line up about on this 45-degree angle, right out in front of the ball. And you're going to notice this amongst pretty much all the good ball strikers. Club blast parallel, forearm points essentially down at the ball. The club head and the shaft obviously are behind the right forearm. At impact, the right forearm remains in front of the shaft. The forearm points, we'll call it 2 feet in front of the ball. And then the shaft finally catches up to the right forearm by about this 45-degree angle. So that means it doesn't catch up at impact, doesn't catch up at the target. It's on this sort of, halfway through 45-degree angle. And I see this demonstrated with essentially all the models that we would use for solid ball striking, at least the ones that I use all the time. I see this same thing presented. So by the time the club gets just shy of parallel to the ground, just under parallel to the ground, the forearm points at the ball. Again, we're referencing the forearm being well in front of the shaft location. As we continue on here, we'll see that the forearm at impact, or just past impact here, points a few feet in front of the ball. So let's go back to our red here, about 2 feet in front. And then we'll see that the shaft and the arm line up again on about that 45-degree angle. So the higher handicaps, the player who struggles with contact, right, the shaft wouldn't be behind the forearm for nearly as long compared to what you see in these really great ball strikers that we watch. These models that I would use, all presenting the same exact thing. Now, if we look at the driver, let's pull up a driver motion here for a second, and we get Rory. We're going to get him down here. We'll see that by the time the shaft is just below parallel to the ground here, just kind of a reference point, this arm's pointing kind of at the ball, right, just in front of it. By the time we get to impact, the forearm still points well in front of the shaft. And then by the time we get to the full throw, it's about that 45-degree angle. So it's about still the same thing with all these clubs. There's going to be minor differences, but it's essentially the same thing. So if you look at it from a different angle, we'll note here, right, here's the forearm line, here's the shaft line. So the shaft is always going to be behind the forearm, right? Here's our impact. Here's the shaft, here's the forearm line. Here's the shaft line. I'm feeling that laser of the forearm staying in front of the shaft. See the difference there? So it's getting closer, right? The shaft's going from way behind the forearm line here to starting to get closer, and then to here, it gets fully lined up, both those lines, right? The yellow line and the red line by about that 45-degree angle. All right, guys, so there you saw, right, during the downswing. I think that's such an awesome visual to help with solidness of contact, shaft lean, compression, etc., is to simply imagine that your right forearm stays in front of the shaft for probably longer than most of you would think. And I really like that. What I feel like when I'm doing this is that there's a laser pointing right out of my forearm. And we saw 3 key checkpoints there. We saw that by the time the club was just past parallel to the ground, this forearm pointed roughly right at the ball. And obviously it's well ahead of where the shaft is. So if I bring this up just to demonstrate here, my forearm line, if it's pointing like a little, what is it, like Spider-Man, sort of Spidey's a little laser out of there, that's way ahead of where the shaft is at. Now, by the time I get to impact, that right arm points 2 feet or so ahead. Again, the right forearm is well ahead of where the shaft is. And the whole point of that, if I bring that up, is to have the club head behind my hands, right? That gives me shaft lean, hit the ball solid and farther. And then we saw that the club lined up with the arm roughly at that 45-degree angle. So it's at the ball, about 2 feet past it by impact, and then lined up. And it's pretty much like that all the way through the bag. We showed one little driver example, but with the drivers, it's roughly the same thing. So this right arm throwing action, when do you throw the right arm? How do you throw the right arm? Well, I would use those as checkpoints, and then you can self-discover your feels based around those. What do I mean by that? Golfer 1, if we took 2 different golfers in front of us, let's say golfer 1 threw the right arm really early, and their forearm and club shaft lined up way back here behind the ball, instead of when it should, way up here. Golfer 1 lines up well behind the ball. What do you think that golfer needs to feel just to get to impact looking normal? They need to feel like their forearm points ahead of the shaft and way forward of the ball. They need to really exaggerate that. They might even need to feel like it doesn't throw and line up until it's like even with the target. They need to feel the opposite of their issue and exaggerate. Let's say golfer 2 comes in and he overdoes this, or she. They have the handle way too far forward. This right forearm points like 10 feet in front. They have too much shaft lean. What do they need to feel? They need to feel as though it lines up sooner. So 2 golfers need to feel completely opposite movements just to hit those same checkpoints. That's why, you guys, the checkpoints in these videos are the gold, and then you correlate your feels against those checkpoints. Okay, so with those feels, what I like to feel, I like to imagine that laser out. I would start with a sand wedge and just start with little short ones and gradually build up. But again, you can feel this with all of your shots. So I'm gonna feel my laser on my forearm staying ahead of the shaft. Yeah, and that feels really solid. So if you're struggling with solidness of contact, getting the handle forward, that's a really good feel for you. And you could do a couple with just the right arm only. Get the shaft to here, get the forearm pointing about at the ball. Most importantly, by impact, the shaft points 2 to 3 feet ahead. Notice as I'm doing that, my right wrist, my trail wrist is bent back about as much as I can have it at this point. It's slowly releasing the impact, and then it's fully released where it's in my line here, 45. That might be all you need to feel is, hey, when should the club and my forearm line up? About 45 past impact. So I should be throwing the club to that point. When should I throw it? You should throw it to the point where you hit those checkpoints on video, right? So once you can do a couple of those, and I really like to, I'm physically, while I'm in my mind, imagining that laser beam out of my right palm, and it's always staying ahead of the shaft, my right palm. So for me, this is what I'm imagining in my mind. My right palm, this forearm, points ahead of the shaft all the way to me. It feels like at least to that 45. And I would do a couple with the wedges and then gradually work my way up to full swing. Forearm ahead of the shaft, right wrist bent back. So my forearm points 2 to 3 feet, right wrist is bent back, it lines up about 45. Let's go ahead and hit that same thing. I'm feeling my forearm ahead of the shaft. Yeah, and that's as solid as I can hit it. So again, the key piece here for you is when do I need to feel that throw? But I think for all of us, make sure that line pointing out of your forearm at impact points 2 to 3 feet ahead of the ball, and the shaft is still way back behind that. The right wrist is still bent. No matter where you're coming from, that is a good alignment. So that's the right forearm. Laser drill, you saw that with those swings, something I highly recommend. If you guys enjoyed this video, we'll go ahead and put another card on the screen for a similar video on how the trail arm works. If you guys want to check out CogornoGolf.com, I would love to work with you there.